what has to be one of the most stunning paradoxes in modern sports.
It really is. It's a wild story.
We're talking about the WNBA. This is a league that just had, by every possible metric, the most successful year in its entire history. I mean, huge cultural relevance, massive growth, stars everywhere.
A total phenomenon.
Exactly. And yet, right now, as we're talking, they are basically staring over a cliff. Their whole collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, it expired at midnight, January 31st.
And just like that, the entire 2026 season is in serious jeopardy.
So that's our mission here today, to unpack how that happens. How does a league go from its absolute peak, its best year ever, to the brink of a total collapse?
And we've been digging into the sources, and they all point to these really uncomfortable financial truths that are, driving every single move in this high-stakes standoff.
That's right. And that clock hitting zero on the CBA, it's so much more than just a date on a calendar. It has just ripped the cover off this terrifying tension at the very heart of the league.
It really has. Our sources, they frame this whole thing not as a negotiation, but as an existential crisis. I mean, one article literally described the league going from a cultural phenomenon just 6 months ago.
Right, during the peak of the 2024 season.
To an afterthought. Almost overnight.
That is just an unbelievable transition.
And we have to be really clear about the severity here. This isn't just about, whether players get a 5 or 10% raise for the next few years.
No, this is much bigger.
The source material underlines it again and again. The question is whether the league will exist or not. It's an existential threat, and it's being driven by what one source called the most dangerous game of chicken in WNBA history.
A game of chicken where, as we'll see, one side has a lot more to lose than the other.
That's the tragic part.
So, okay, if the players are coming to the table from this position of strength, right? They created all this insane value in 2024. What is the league's core argument? What's the word coming from the owner's side that justifies risking it all?
The one word you see over and over and over again is unsustainable.
Unsustainable.
That's their whole argument. The league is saying, yes, 2024 was a massive boom, the attendance, the ratings, the merch, all of it. But the underlying financial structure of the league as it stands today, it just cannot support the demands the Players Association is making.
So they see it as a fluke, a one-off.
They see it as a temporary, very fragile anomaly, not some permanent shift in their whole economic reality.
And meanwhile, the Players Association, the WNBPA, they are not backing down. We're seeing some pretty aggressive tactics from them.
Oh, they are pushing back and pushing back hard. They're using all the classic labor protest moves to pressure the owners and, get the public on their side.
Like, what have we seen?
We've seen reports of players all over social media talking openly about a strike. They're using their platforms to get the fans fired up. But the most theatrical move, the one that really got everyone's attention,
The rat.
the giant inflatable rat. The universal symbol for a labor dispute. They put it right outside the NBA store in New York City.
Wow, that is not a subtle message.
Not at all. It's a clear signal that they see the owner's position as exploitative. But all the while, the owners are just quietly but firmly pushing back with that one single economically terrifying word: unsustainable.
Okay, let's start with the boom then. Because you're right, without the success of 2024, the WNBPA doesn't have this kind of leverage. It was, hands down, the best year in its history. Let's put some numbers to that. What were the actual metrics?
It was growth everywhere, but the sources really point to 3 key areas. First, you have these massive gains in revenue, mostly from corporate sponsors who, frankly, had ignored the league for years.
Money was pouring in.
Yeah, finally. Second, attendance was way up, especially for games with big-name rookies. It showed fans were willing to actually buy tickets and show up in person.
And the third, which is arguably the most important for long-term health.
Television ratings, they were up across the board. The league was finally getting, consistent, meaningful viewership in primetime slots. That's the holy grail.
But the thing that really broke through, the metric that made my non-basketball fan friends start talking about the league, was the merchandise. That's where it went from good growth to something else entirely.
Astronomical is the word.
Yeah.
Merchandise sales just exploded. And the sources have this one specific, almost unbelievable data point that centers on the engine of all that growth: Caitlin Clark.
Her jersey sales were just off the charts.
Off the charts doesn't even cover it. For a pretty significant period of time, Caitlin Clark's jersey outsold every single player in the NBA. Everyone. Except for 2 guys.
LeBron James and Steph Curry.
That's it. Just think about that for a second. The scale of that. She wasn't just the top seller in the WNBA. She was competing at a level reserved for like all-time global sports icons.
And that achievement, that's what gives the players this sense of, justified anger. They're thinking, we created that value, we deserve a piece of it.
Of course.
So if they had this landmark breakthrough year, why on earth is the league so stuck on this word unsustainable? This is the pivot point. This is where it all gets complicated.
It all comes down to a deep, deep fear of regression. Because all of that success, all that growth, according to our sources, it was dependent on one single factor.
Let me guess.
Caitlin Clark staying healthy and staying culturally relevant. That is the uncomfortable truth that the owners are staring at every day and that the players, maybe, are choosing to ignore in the heat of the fight.
So this isn't about a normal dip in performance. The league thinks the entire ecosystem, the whole thing, is built on this one single fragile pillar.
That's the core vulnerability. The analysis makes this truly stark, frankly terrifying claim. It says the league is one Caitlin Clark injury away. And we're talking about something as common as a torn ACL, a bad ankle sprain.
Things that happen all the time in sports.
All the time. One injury away from going back to pre-2024 levels of relevance. They're not just worried about losing the new growth, they are terrified of collapsing all the way back to 2023, but now they have 2025 level expectations and costs.
Let's play that out. If that nightmare injury scenario happens, what's the immediate financial ripple effect? What makes the unsustainable label real?
Okay, so let's say Clark tears her ACL in May. The economic landscape it shifts violently. First, all those rosy revenue projections, they collapse overnight.
Okay.
Second, and this is the really big one, that television deal. The multi-year anchor the league is counting on to fund everything. The broadcast partners would almost certainly renegotiate downward. They'd realize the product they bought is now missing its main attraction.
They're not paying for a league without its biggest star.
Of course not. And third, attendance would absolutely drop back to those pre-Clark 2023 levels. The whole thing is a house of cards, and it's built on the charisma and the talent of one single athlete. If she's sidelined, the structure is just fundamentally unsound.
It makes the whole 2024 celebration feel more like a temporary sugar high than a stable foundation. What evidence do the sources give that this fragility is already showing up even without an injury?
The most compelling piece of evidence is just how quickly the media went silent again. By January 2025, it was like the 2024 season never happened.
The cultural phenomenon became an afterthought.
In a heartbeat. Think about how much women's basketball was on TV, online, everywhere during the playoffs. By January, it evaporated. Big mainstream sports shows like First Take on ESPN, they just stopped talking about it.
And it wasn't just talk shows, right? They weren't even covering major news.
That's the really telling part. The sources note that ESPN, which is supposed to be a key partner, they barely covered a massive 44-point game from Paige Buchers, who is another one of these foundational stars.
Wow. So the second the novelty wore off, the media just reverted to its old habits. That's a brutal observation.
And a tragic one, but it's so critical to understanding the leverage here. The exact quote is that the league went from cultural phenomenon to afterthought in 6 months. And if you look at the exceptions, they just prove the rule.
Mano.
The only WNBA story that actually broke through into the mainstream in January 2025 was that. What do you think?
It had to be about Clark.
It was directly about Clark, specifically her first game in the unrivaled league, and all the rumors about her maybe moving to the New York Liberty. If it wasn't a Clark-centric story, there was just this deafening silence. And that reinforces this deep, perilous dependency. This is the truth the owners are bringing to that negotiating table.
Okay, so that sets the stage perfectly. You have the league terrified that this is all a bubble, crying unsustainable. But you have the players who are correctly saying, hey, we created this massive tangible value.
Yep, that's the conflict.
Which brings us right to the negotiating table, to the battle lines over the new CBA. What is the WNBPA's core demand? How do they want to be paid?
So their main demand, it's not just for a flat pay raise, it's for a fundamental change. They want to move to a revenue sharing model.
Like men's leagues.
Exactly. Specifically, they want a system tied to 30% of gross league revenue. They want to just tear up the old fixed salary system and replace it with one that scales up immediately when the league does well.
And the mechanism here is key. They're demanding a fluctuating system, right?
Absolutely. They want that fluctuation because they want the upside. If the league has another massive year like 2024, their slice of that 30% gets way bigger. If the league has a bad year, Sure, their share falls, but they're betting on growth.
They want their paychecks to be mathematically linked to the league's performance.
That's it. And they're framing this whole demand under this very powerful, very compelling buzzword, pay equity. They're saying, look, we created the value, so we deserve the same kind of pay structure as the NBA.
It's a really powerful argument, rhetorically. So what is the league's cold, hard financial response to that 30% demand?
Their offer couldn't be more different. They're offering a fixed salary cap that goes up by a guaranteed 5% every single year. Doesn't matter if the league has a great year or a terrible year, it's a locked-in 5% increase.
Stability over volatility.
Right. And the response to the 30% revenue sharing demand, it's an unambiguous, completely non-negotiable, non-starter. They say it's just fundamentally impossible with the way the league is currently set up.
Okay, we need to dive into that. This is the technical part, but it's the most important part. Why? If the league is growing, why can't they just adopt a revenue share model like the NBA? Why is it a structural impossibility?
This is the absolute heart of the whole fight, and it's the key insight from the sources. The WNBA structure is just profoundly different from the NBA's.
How so?
In the NBA, the league is highly centralized. Most of the big money, we're talking national TV rights, league-wide sponsorships, international stuff, it all flows into one big pot at the league office. Then they split that pot up between the teams and the players. The league office basically controls the majority of the money.
And the WNBA is different.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's far more decentralized. Most of the teams are independently owned, and those individual owners, they manage their own local costs. The arena rent, the team travel, local marketing, ticket sales, that's all on them.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
So the league office, yeah, it controls the national media deals and the big league-wide sponsorships, but it does not control enough of the total gross revenue to guarantee a 30% payout.
So when the players demand 30% of gross league revenue, that number includes a ton of money that the league office literally can't touch.
Precisely. It includes all that local team revenue, the ticket sales in Indiana, the local TV deal in Seattle. The league office can't access it, they can't track it, and they certainly can't guarantee payouts against it. The analysis explicitly says the league's current model literally cannot support that financial structure.
So the owners are basically saying, we don't hold the keys to the bank you're trying to rob. Even if the money exists somewhere in the system, they can't centralize it to pay it out.
Exactly. They're saying, to do what you're asking, we would have to completely restructure every ownership agreement, all our operations, all our financial reporting. That's a multi-year project in itself. It's a structural impossibility right now, not just an affordability issue.
That really changes the pay equity argument, doesn't it? The players are right that they created value and should share in it, but the specific mechanism they chose is, it sounds like, fundamentally unworkable.
That's the profound irony of the whole situation. The sources are very critical of the WNBPA for demanding this specific structure. They call it dangerous, especially for a league that has, for most of its history, operated at a loss.
They're demanding a system built for a mature, profitable, centralized league.
Which the WNBA is not. Not yet, anyway.
And the danger, as we talked about, isn't just about today's money. It's the risk that the 2024 boom collapses, and if they're on a revenue share model, it takes all the players' salaries down with it.
And that's where the league's offer of a fixed cap suddenly starts to look like a safety net.
Walk us through that hypothetical risk again, the one the sources highlight.
Okay, let's go back to the nightmare scenario. Major Caitlin Clark injury. Cultural interest plummets. Sponsors and TV partners get nervous and pull back. If the league had already adopted that 30% revenue share model, and let's say projected revenue drops by 50%, the impact on the salary cap is just devastating.
Give us the hard numbers. What is the analysis project?
So the salary cap they're negotiating now, based on the 2024 boom, is somewhere around $1.3 million per team. If they switch to revenue sharing and then that collapse happened, the salary cap could drop precipitously from $1.3 million all the way down to maybe $600,000.
A drop of more than half? So players who just signed big contracts thinking the cap was $1.3 million would suddenly have their pay slashed.
Exactly. Or teams would have to cut half their roster. It would be absolute chaos. And suddenly that boring offer from the owners, the guaranteed 5% annual increase. It looks extremely attractive. It's protection against disaster.
It's stability.
It is. The owners are offering stability, even if it feels like they're lowballing the value from 2024. They think they're protecting the long-term health of the institution. The players are chasing what they see as equity, but They're betting their entire livelihood on the health of one player and the whims of the media.
It's a strange reversal of a typical labor fight. Usually it's the players fighting for guaranteed money.
It's highly unusual. The players are focused on the moral victory of pay equity, while the owners are focused on the financial reality of, just staying solvent. And the sources argue that in the specific case, solvency has to come before perceived equity if the league is going to survive.
So the WNBPA's whole strategy relies on the idea that the owners need them. But the sources we've looked at reveal what they call a harsh reality about that leverage.
It's a very harsh reality. The sources are incredibly blunt about this. They say, look, the league absolutely needs athletes on the court. But the crucial distinction is this. The league needs Caitlin Clark healthy and playing. It doesn't need all of them.
Oof, that is a brutal economic calculation.
It is. And it's what gives the owners the confidence to take such a hard line.
It speaks to the idea that the league's brand, or maybe a few players' brands, are stronger than the vast majority of the individual players' brands.
It does. The painful conclusion from the analysis is that the league's value is really carried by a very, very small group of megastars. The sources identify maybe 6 or 7 players whose individual brand is bigger than their team's brand.
These are the players who are truly not replaceable, the ones who guarantee ratings no matter who they play.
Right, and knowing who is on that list really helps you understand who actually has the leverage in this fight.
So who is on the list?
The list provided includes the obvious names: Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Buchers. Then you have Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, Agota Wilson, and Niga Agumaike, or possibly Nafisa Collier. Those 7 are national figures. They move merch, they command social media. They're the reason a fan in New York might tune into a Las Vegas game.
They move the financial needle all by themselves.
Yes, and the economic conclusion for basically everyone else in the league.
Let me guess. It's not good.
The source material is unequivocal. Everyone else is replaceable from a business perspective. Now, that's not a knock on their talent, it's a purely economic assessment. If a solid non-star veteran sits out, sure, attendance in their home city might dip a bit, but the national TV deals, the big sponsorships, those are tied to the Clarks and the Wilsons of the world.
And the league knows this. The owners know this, which is why they see the WNBPA's strike threat as essentially self-destructive.
They do. And to really hammer this point home, the sources give this perfect illustrative example. They call it the Connecticut Sun test.
Why the Connecticut Sun?
They're the perfect case study. They're a stable, successful team. They're in a loyal but not huge media market. They consistently have good attendance and win games, but they usually do it with great team chemistry, not one single global superstar.
So it's a test of brand loyalty versus player loyalty.
Exactly. The source makes this claim. You could, hypothetically, replace the entire Connecticut Sun roster, all of the veterans, the role players, everyone, with talented UConn alums who aren't currently in the WNBA. And attendance and viewership wouldn't drop by much.
Wow.
Fans are showing up for the Connecticut Sun, they're showing up for the local team, for the experience of professional women's basketball. They're loyal to the logo on the front of the jersey, not necessarily the name on the back.
That is a devastating implication for the players' union. It means the league needs Asha Wilson, it needs Caitlin Clark, but it could probably lose 70% of the other players and survive financially.
That's the cold, hard math. The owners can weather a strike by the majority of players much, much better than those players can endure losing their only source of income. The players this, if they all walk out, the league crumbles and they get leverage. The owners know that the replacement pool of talent from college and overseas is deep enough to keep the product on the floor.
Okay, what about the players' backup plan, their perceived alternative? If the WNBA folds, can't they just start their own league or go play somewhere else?
This is maybe the biggest strategic miscalculation of all on the players' side. The main alternative everyone talked about was unrivaled.
Right, the new league with all that startup money.
All that startup money. The sources describe it as being funded by tech bros who thought women's basketball was the next crypto. And despite having a ton of cash and launching right at the peak of the Clark boom, Unrivaled is already failing. Dramatically.
And we have data to back that up.
Oh yeah, the data is definitive, and it's terrible news for the WNBPA's negotiating position. Unrivaled finished dead last in primetime television ratings for their key demographic.
Dead last.
Dead last. It was a profound failure. It proved that just throwing money at something and having a few big names isn't enough to build a sustainable league from scratch.
And that failure led to some desperate moves.
It did. The sources say Unrivaled had to sign a panic deal with TNT right after they lost the NBA rights. They were just scrambling for any kind of legitimacy or broadcast platform. The reality check here is brutal. Even when the WNBA was the hottest thing in sports, a well-funded alternative still could make it work.
And the other, smaller alternatives, like the 3-on-3 leagues.
The source mentions ICE, the new 3-on-3 league. And while it's an interesting concept, it has not proven at all that it can sustain itself financially or generate any kind of meaningful, consistent audience. The reality for the players is this. If the WNBA goes away, there is no viable professional women's basketball league in America that can just absorb 144 players and pay them comparable salaries. The WNBA is their career path.
So we've laid out this incredibly fragile foundation, the impossible demands, the illusion of leverage. All of this is leading to what the sources call the nightmare scenario, a player strike.
Right. And the players are betting that missing games creates urgency and forces the owner's hand. But the analysis argues it does the exact opposite. It triggers a financial collapse.
Let's walk through that domino effect. What happens the moment a season is canceled?
The instant the league can't deliver its product, the games, its value goes to zero. All the contracts that keep the lights on are based on delivering a certain number of games. When the games vanish, the money vanishes.
So domino number one would be the sponsors, right? The very people who drove the 2024 boom.
They're the first to go. The sponsors who signed those huge deals based on the hype of 2024, they immediately pull out or demand their money back. We're talking about the broadcast sponsors, the companies with their names on the court, all of it. This cuts off the primary source of cash for a league that already operates on razor-thin margins. It's a fatal blow.
And if the sponsors are gone, the TV networks can't be far behind, which kills any hope of funding future salary increases.
That's domino number two. The television partners will immediately try to renegotiate their contracts. And think about how bad the timing is. The league was counting on a new, bigger TV deal based on the 2024 ratings to fund the very raises the players are demanding.
So a strike completely jeopardizes the money that was supposed to pay for the new CBA.
It could cancel it outright. The networks aren't going to pay a premium for an unstable product. The league loses the single biggest source of funding it was counting on for the next decade.
And what about the teams themselves? The sources mentioned that not all markets are equally healthy.
Domino number three. This revenue collapse hits the most vulnerable teams the hardest. The teams in smaller markets, the ones that have historically lost money every year and been subsidized by owners, they'll just be forced to shut down immediately.
So the league wouldn't just shrink, it could dissolve market by market.
Yes. Under the weight of lost revenue and broken contracts and the sudden painful realization that the 2024 boom was just too fragile to support the whole enterprise.
And beyond all that immediate financial damage, there's the invisible damage, the permanent damage, the shift in the narrative.
And that might be the most dangerous part of all, the narrative shift. Right now, the story of the WNBA is growth, excitement, investment. It's a hot property.
It's a good story.
It's a great story. If there's a strike, that story flips overnight. The new narrative becomes the WNBA is unstable, it's risky, it's run by people who can't get along, it's not worth our investment. And once you lose that trust with corporations and media partners, it could take a generation to get it back, if you ever get it back.
And the deep tragedy in all of this is the risk disparity. The owners can absorb that damage, the players can't.
That is the essential brutal imbalance. The owners are, for the most part, billionaires with huge, diversified portfolios. The WNBA is an investment, maybe even a vanity project. If it fails, they take a loss, they write it off, and they move on. They survive.
But for the players?
For the players, this is everything. It's their career, it's their livelihood, it's their only real professional option in the United States. They are betting their entire future on this.
Let's put a real number on that. Ground the financial cost for the average player so our listeners can feel the gravity of this gamble.
Okay, think about an average WNBA player. Maybe she's making around $200,000 a year. Over a 10-year career, her total lifetime earnings from professional basketball are about $2 million.
Okay.
If she misses just one season because of a strike, she loses 10% of her entire projected lifetime income. Gone. If the league folds completely, she loses everything. And as we've established, there's nowhere else for her to go in America.
And the idea that she could just go play overseas and make up the difference is a myth.
It's a total myth. The leagues in Europe and Asia, yes, they pay well, but they're not going to suddenly double their salary offers just because 144 WNBA players are suddenly looking for jobs. They have budgets. The market can't just absorb that. The players have no real economic exit strategy if they push this to the point of collapse.
They are negotiating as if they have maximum leverage, when in reality their financial hand is incredibly weak.
That's the tragic disconnect.
So given this almost impossible situation, what does the source material suggest is the smartest path forward? The way for the players to minimize this risk but still get a win?
The smartest move, according to the analysis, is a pragmatic retreat. Take the league's offer, take the fixed salary cap with the guaranteed 5% annual increases.
And just accept it.
Take the deal and then publicly declare victory. Frame it as a win. They secured guaranteed raises, they secured stability, they avoided a disaster, and then, and this is the crucial part, agreed to renegotiate the whole thing again in 3 years.
Why 3 years specifically? What's the magic in that timeline?
That 3-year window is everything. It gives both sides enough time and enough data to figure out if the 2024 boom was sustainable. Was the Caitlin Clark effect a one-time spike, or did it permanently reset the league's baseline revenue?
It gives them time to get real proof.
Real, verifiable proof of structural growth that goes beyond just one player. If by 2029 the league is still growing, if the TV ratings are still high, if new sponsors have come in, then their leverage will be real, it will be stable, and their demand for revenue sharing will actually be financially justifiable.
So the core criticism is that the WNBPA is acting on the emotional high of one great year instead of the cautious reality of the league's 30-year history.
That's it in a nutshell. The sources suggest they're being advised by people who are treating this like an NBA negotiation. But the WNBA doesn't have NBA profits, it doesn't have an NBA structure, and it doesn't have NBA stability. They're risking the entire institution for a principle that the institution can't yet financially support.
Wow, this has been an incredibly detailed look at the financial and structural tightrope the WNBA is on right now. All that cultural momentum from 2024 is now crashing against the brutal economic reality of the league's history.
A very precarious position.
So let's quickly review the 3 possible outcomes that the sources predict as this deadline gets closer and closer.
Okay, scenario 1, and this is what the analysis predicts is most likely. The players blink at the last second. They realize the strike is just too costly, and they accept a deal that's slightly better than the original offer, maybe a 6% annual increase instead of 5%, and then they declare victory anyway.
Right. Scenario 2, they actually do it. They strike. They miss a big chunk of the season.
In that scenario, they panic when they see the public, and the media aren't fully on their side. They're forced back to the table and end up taking a worse deal than the one they could have had in the first place, and they've already done serious damage to the league's reputation.
And then there's the third one, the catastrophic one.
The nightmare scenario, which the sources say is terrifyingly possible because of how fragile the league is. They strike, the entire season is canceled, all those financial dominoes we talked about, they fall. The league folds. And professional women's basketball in America just dies for a generation.
The fact that we even have to seriously talk about scenario 3, the complete collapse of the league right after its greatest triumph, it just proves how fragile this all still is.
That is the critical takeaway here. The 2024 success was an opportunity, not a guarantee of stability. And now both sides are fighting so hard over that opportunity that they might just destroy the whole thing.
And it's true, both sides are trying to maximize their position. That's how business works.
It is. The sources acknowledge that. It's the nature of pro sports. But the fundamental difference, the one that you just can't get away from, is that only one side is betting their entire livelihood on the outcome.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought, something for you, the listener, to really grapple with after this deep dive. The source material ends with a really direct and challenging question that forces you to pick a side based on priorities, not just emotion.
The question the analysis poses is this: if the WNBA season is canceled because of this negotiation, whose side are you on?
Are you with the players? The ones who are demanding more money because they created this massive undeniable value, but in doing so, are risking the entire league by demanding a financial model that is, by all accounts, structurally impossible right now?
Or are you with the owners? The ones who are trying to protect the long-term stability of the league by insisting on caution and guaranteed manageable growth, but in doing so, might be seen as lowballing and devaluing the very athletes who created this moment in the first place.
And you can't just say, oh, both sides have good points. A canceled season forces a choice. Do you prioritize immediate labor rights, even if they're risky? Or do you prioritize long-term economic stability, even if it feels unfair in the short term?
What stands out to you as the more responsible position for the future of the WNBA?
We'll leave you to think about the weight of those stakes.